The study of human intelligence and cognition has been an ever-evolving science. Over the course of history, each generation has struggled to better understand how individuals think and process information. During this past century, tremendous energy and resources have been expended on formal intelligence testing and assessment. This 20th century IQ phenomenon has had a monumental impact on education, greatly contributing to the tracking, labeling, and classification of children so prevalent in our schools today. All done in an effort to separate the intellectual haves from the intellectual have-nots, and all based on a narrow view of intelligence comprised almost exclusively of two areas: language and mathematics. As the 21st century approaches, we are now poised to move beyond the antiquated concept of IQ to the more advanced theory of multiple intelligences, where the human intellect is valued for its many ways of being smart, where society embraces the notion that all children can learn and that giftedness rests within every child. Our task as educators is to find and nurture the giftedness in all. I believe that every child is gifted, and when I say that, I don't mean that I feel like every child's going to be able to go into a testing room and get 130 or 140 on an IQ test. I'm really looking at a model of intelligence that goes way beyond IQ, the theory of multiple intelligences, developed by Dr. Howard Gardner at Harvard University. And Dr. Gardner said that our concept of intelligence has been far too limited. It's been yoked to this notion of IQ. Now, he defines intelligence as the ability to solve problems and the ability to fashion products. And he says when you use these two particular criteria, you can see that there are, in fact, many different kinds of intelligence, not simply one form. And he initially introduced 7 intelligences and more recently has added an 8th. The first intelligence is the linguistic intelligence, the intelligence of words, the intelligence of the storyteller, the intelligence of the great writer or the novelist or the poet or playwright. This is an intelligence that we put a great deal of emphasis on in the schools, perhaps too much emphasis at the expense of the other intelligences. The second intelligence is logical mathematical intelligence, which is the intelligence of a mathematician, a computer programmer, a tax accountant, a scientist. And this is also an intelligence that we have honored, that we have valued a great deal in our culture and in our schools. It seems like ever since the Russians put Sputnik up back in the mid-50s, the United States has been set on being competitive internationally in the math and science arena. So these two intelligences, Gardner's told us, the linguistic and the logical mathematical, are the two that the schools have focused the most attention on, that IQ testing draws upon for the most part. And those intelligences are very important, don't get me wrong, yet they leave out a great deal of what is known about human potential. So Gardner talks about other intelligences, the spatial intelligence, which is the intelligence of pictures and images. This is the intelligence of an artist, of an architect, of a landscape designer, people who are really good with looking at space, looking at color, looking at the use of line and form. And this is an intelligence that typically gets undervalued in our schools. I've discovered in some of my own research that a lot of kids who get labeled dyslexic, for example, may in fact have high levels of spatial intelligence. And they tend to look at things in picture and image ways. And when they're shown a picture, let's say, of a small case B or a small case D, they look at it with a 360-degree mind. And so when they read it or write it, they may be flip-flopping. And that appears to us as a disability. But in fact, if you look at it within the context of the theory of multiple intelligences, these kids are actually showing us an incredible ability, which can lead to a great success in life. The fourth intelligence is the bodily kinesthetic intelligence, the intelligence of the athlete, the intelligence of the dancer, the actor, the craftsperson, the individual who can make beautiful things with their hands. And this is also an intelligence that we've typically undervalued in the schools. You know, we talk about the dumb jock and we say, oh, it's too bad he can't make it in the academic track, he'll have to go to vocational school, as if somehow working with the hands is inferior to working with numbers and words. And yet if you go back to the Greek era 2,000 years ago, you'll find that mind and body were considered a unit. The Greeks used gymnastics as mental training. And I think Gardner is suggesting in bodily kinesthetic intelligences that we need to re-heal the split that's occurred between the mind and the body. I find that there are a lot of kids out there who are highly bodily kinesthetically intelligent who get labeled as hyperactive or labeled with America's new learning disease, ADD or ADHD. These are kids that learn best by moving and building and touching, and if they have to sit still in a desk for any period of time, it's going to be agony for them. And of course they're going to twitch and fidget and get out of their desk and get things in their hands and want to get involved physically. But if we understand what these kids can do, if we understand their true inner giftedness using this model, then I think that we are going to get away from these disability labels and get much closer to the kinds of solutions that will lead to their ultimate success in school and then later on in life. Then there's the musical intelligence. This is the intelligence of, you know, the composer, the DJ, the individual who has a good sense of rhythm, of tone, of timbre, the kid that knows all the songs that are out these days, who has just an incredible sense of ability to remember tunes, to reproduce them, either through voice or maybe through a musical instrument. And this is an intelligence that we've typically regarded as a talent, not as an intelligence. We say, oh yeah, he has a talent for music. Not very intelligent, but he has a talent for music. And we put it out on the periphery of our educational structures. You know, we have our music class, we have our band, but if there's a problem with the budget in a school district, who do they lop off first from the budget? Do they get rid of the reading program? No. Do they get rid of the math and science program? No. Do they get rid of the computers? No. They get rid of the music program. They get rid of the orchestra, they get rid of the band, thinking that it's dispensable. But there's a lot of new research coming out suggesting that music is instrumental in a child's thinking processes. We know that young children who are exposed to regular music instruction actually do increase their IQ scores, increase their ability to perform on a variety of measures, especially relating, interestingly enough, to spatial and temporal related kinds of abilities. So this is a very important intelligence that Gardner is saying we've got to look at in a whole new way. Now the next intelligence is the interpersonal. This is people smarts. The intelligence of the business person, the intelligence that the politician has to sometimes manipulate people, the intelligence of the family counselor who can mediate disputes between people. We know people, in fact, who have something called dysemia, which is kind of like dyslexia, only it's for people. People who have trouble reading other people. They miss social cues. They miss social signs. And these are the awkward people in social settings. And we know them. We've had them over for dinner. You know, we've had them for coffee, and now it's getting late and it's time for them to go, but they're not reading our signs. We're looking at our watch, we're stretching, and they're not reading us. And they're actually, it's kind of like dyslexia for people. And it's a very important thing to be able to master, the ability to get along with each other, the ability to understand what another person wants, what they intend, what motivates them. Some of these skills can actually lead to more success in life than being able to read and write. Someone recently has talked about EQ, the emotional intelligence, being more important than IQ. That out in life there are people with low IQs in charge of people with high IQs. But these low IQ people actually have a great deal of EQ, the ability to get along with others. So Gardner, I think, has done a great service in suggesting that interpersonal intelligence is something that we need to give a great deal more emphasis to in the schools. And then the final of the 7 that he initially introduced is the intrapersonal intelligence. Intra, I-N-T-R-A, means within. And so intrapersonal intelligence is the intelligence of knowing who we are, of self. It's knowing where we've been in our life. It's knowing where we are now, knowing what we're good at and what we're not good at. It's also knowing where we're going in our life. It's the intelligence of goal setting, the intelligence of having a vision for your life, of a sense of destiny, and so forth. And Dr. Gardner says this is probably the most important intelligence of all, because if we don't know who we are inside, then we can't use the other intelligences that we may have at our disposal. And then finally, Dr. Gardner added recently an eighth intelligence. It's called the naturalist's intelligence. And this is the intelligence of living forms. It's the intelligence of a Darwin, the intelligence of an E.O. Wilson, who won a couple of Pulitzer Prizes for his ability to understand living forms. He was in particular an ant specialist. But there are kids in classrooms who are bug specialists. They know everything there is to know about bugs, or lizards, or butterflies, or some other unique life form. Or maybe these are the kids that love to just go out in nature and explore every minute aspect of it. And this is a wonderful way of looking at intelligence, because now in our age today, where we're confronting so many difficulties with the environment, we need ecologists of the mind, essentially, people who have that sense of nature and have the ability to go out and heal nature in a constructive way. So these are the 8 intelligences that Gardner's given us. He's also right now playing around with some other possibilities. And I think it's useful for teachers to think about what they feel might be additional intelligences that could be added to this model. This is sort of a dynamic model. It's not fixed in stone tablets. It's in process. And there's all kinds of room for thought and for change and for innovation in this way of looking at learning in a whole new way.
We first started in our district with strategic planning. And one of our beliefs that we came away with was that every student had unique talents and abilities. Yet, when we stretched it and tried to say every student is gifted, we had people who balked at that concept. It was like, oh right, you know, Ralph, you've been out of the classroom too long, you don't know what you're talking about. And for me, it just started as a deep-seated belief that every child has a talent, but it's our ignorance that can't find it. And so we tend to teach large classes, so we tend, just the belief was, we tend to teach our style. And it's very difficult to try to get to 30 individual styles. And along comes Howard Gardner. And one of the people in our district went to a conference, and he came back with a book on multiple intelligence. And that was the first time for us to kind of legitimize people learn differently and have different intelligences. And so our response down at the district office was, yeah, you know, finally we got some evidence and we can start to move forward with it.